Let me ask you something. Have you ever opened your investment app, seen everything in red, and just closed it? Like, if you don't look at it, it's not real. I've done that. A lot of people have. And there's no shame in it. It's actually a very human response to uncertainty. But here's what's interesting. The people who tend to come out the other side of a market downturn in a better position than when they went in, they weren't necessarily smarter. They didn't have some secret information. They just did a few quiet, boring things before things got chaotic. Not because they predicted a crash, but because they respected the possibility that one could happen. And that's what today is really about. Not fear, not panic selling, not doom scrolling financial news at 2 a.m. It's about that calm, grounded version of you. The one who plans ahead, stays clear-headed, and doesn't need a crystal ball to make good decisions. So if you've been feeling that low hum of financial anxiety lately, watching the headlines, wondering whether now is the time to do something, this video is for you. Let's slow down and think this through together. And hey, if this kind of content speaks to you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. I put out videos like this every week, and I don't want you to miss one. Now, here's where I want to push back on something, because I think most of the content around market crashes gets it completely wrong. Every few months, someone releases a video or article with some version of, "The crash is coming, do this now." And what happens? People panic. They sell everything. They stuff cash under the mattress. They make 6 decisions in 24 hours that they'll spend the next 3 years undoing. That's not financial wisdom. That's fear dressed up as advice. And on the other end, there's the crowd that says, just ignore it, stay the course, don't even look. Which sounds very zen, but sometimes it's just avoidance with better PR. The truth is somewhere in the middle. And honestly, it's a lot less dramatic than either side wants you to believe. A market downturn is not a personal attack on your future. It's not punishment. Markets have always gone up, come down, and gone back up again, sometimes over months, sometimes over years. History is remarkably consistent about that. What does change the outcome for individuals is not timing the market, it's your behavior around the market. It's the unglamorous stuff, the decisions you make before the headlines hit. So let's talk about 5 of those things. And I want to be really clear, these aren't things you do because a crash is definitely coming tomorrow. These are things you do because they make your financial life more stable, regardless of what the market does. That's the mindset shift I want you to carry through this entire video. The first thing is understanding what you actually own and why. This sounds obvious, right? But you'd be surprised how many people are invested in things they chose based on a Reddit thread from 2 years ago, or something a coworker mentioned at lunch. There's no judgment there. Most of us started that way. But when things get rocky, the people who panic the hardest are usually the ones who don't fully understand what's in their portfolio or why it's there. So the first thing I'd encourage you to do is simple. Sit down for an hour and really look at what you own. Is it index funds, individual stocks, a mix of both? Do you know what sectors you're exposed to? Do you understand the basic idea behind your investments? Meaning, do you actually believe in the long-term case for what you're holding? Because here's the thing about market volatility. It tests conviction. If you genuinely understand why you own something, watching it drop 20% is uncomfortable, but manageable. If you own something you barely understand, a 20% drop turns into an identity crisis. And that's when people make expensive mistakes. You don't need to become a financial analyst. You just need enough understanding that you can look at a red day and think, I know why I own this, and nothing about today changed that. That level of clarity is worth more than most people realize. The second thing is your emergency fund. And I know, everyone says this, but stick with me because I want to reframe what an emergency fund actually is, especially in the context of a market downturn. Most people think of it as something for when your car breaks down or you lose your job. And yes, that's part of it. But here's the layer that doesn't get talked about enough. Your emergency fund is also what prevents you from being forced to sell investments at the worst possible time. Think about it. If the market drops 30% and your roof suddenly needs replacing and you have no cash buffer, what do? You sell.
You sell at the bottom. And then when the market recovers, you've already missed it. That's not bad luck. That's a structural problem that could have been solved in advance. 3 to 6 months of essential expenses sitting in a high-yield savings account, not in the market, not in crypto, just sitting there, being boring, is one of the most underrated forms of investment protection you can have. It doesn't make a great thumbnail, but it quietly saves people from catastrophic decisions every single time things get turbulent. And if yours isn't there yet, that's okay. Even starting to build it now, even a small amount each month, shifts something psychologically. You stop feeling so exposed, and that feeling matters more than most people admit.
Third, take a real, honest look at your debt structure. Not all debt is equal. A mortgage at a low interest rate is a very different animal from a credit card sitting at 20-something%. But in times of financial stress, all debt starts to feel the same, heavy, and a little threatening. And that feeling can distort otherwise good decision-making. Before any kind of market turbulence hits your life in a real way, it's worth knowing exactly what you owe, to whom, and at what interest rate. Just the clarity of that, writing it out, seeing it as actual numbers instead of this vague cloud of dread, changes how you relate to it. High-interest consumer debt is almost always worth prioritizing over aggressive investing in volatile markets. If you're paying 20% interest on a credit card balance and the market gives you 8% in a good year, the math there is pretty unfavorable. Getting that debt under control isn't giving up on investing. It's actually one of the best returns you can get on your money. And here's the psychological piece that I think is underappreciated. When you enter a volatile period with less debt hanging over you, your anxiety goes down, and lower anxiety leads to better decisions. It really is that connected. And the fifth thing, this one is probably the most underrated, is to automate and keep investing. I know that feels counterintuitive. If a crash might be coming, shouldn't you wait? But here's what the data has shown consistently over decades. Nobody times the market perfectly. Not most retail investors, not most professional fund managers. The people who try to wait for the right moment often end up sitting in cash through entire recovery periods and then buying back in near the next peak. It's deeply ironic. What does work, what actually measurably works, is consistent investing over time, setting up an automatic contribution and letting it run. When prices are high, you buy fewer units. When prices are low, you buy more. Over years and decades, this smooths out volatility in a way that trying to be clever about timing simply can't. And the reason I call this the most underrated thing is that it removes emotional decision-making entirely. You're not watching the market every day asking, is now the time? The answer is already decided. And that mental freedom is genuinely valuable. Now, here's what I really want you to sit with for a moment. Every single one of these 5 things, understanding your investments, building a cash cushion, managing debt, aligning your risk level, staying consistent, none of them require you to predict the future. None of them are rooted in panic. All of them make your financial life better, whether the market crashes next week or keeps climbing for 5 more years. That's the shift I want you to make. From what do I do if a crash happens to how do I build a financial life that isn't at the mercy of whatever happens next? Those are very different questions. And the second one is so much more empowering. A crash doesn't have to be a disaster. For people who are prepared, people who have liquidity, manageable debt, and a long time horizon, a market downturn is actually a chance to keep buying good assets at lower prices. That's not contrarianism for the sake of it. That's just what patient, prepared investors have experienced again and again throughout history. The stress doesn't come from the market going down. The stress comes from being financially exposed when it does. And that's the part you actually have control over. So here's what I'd suggest you do this week. Nothing dramatic, just a few small moves. Spend one evening reviewing your accounts. What are you holding, and do you understand why? If you can't explain it simply, that's a signal to either learn more or simplify. Look at your savings and figure out where your emergency fund stands. If it's not where you want it to be, set up even a small automatic transfer to a high-yield savings account. Even a modest amount each month can shift your trajectory. Pull up your debt balances and write down the interest rate next to each one. Just having that clarity costs you nothing and gives you a real picture of what deserves your attention first. Log into your retirement or investment account and check your allocation. Does it still reflect who you are now? Your actual timeline, your actual risk tolerance, not who you were when you first set it up. And finally, if you're not already automating your investments, even a small amount, consider setting that up this week. Consistency really is the game. It's not exciting, it rarely makes headlines, but it works. I want to end on something that's easy to forget when you're deep in financial anxiety. The reason you care about money is because it represents something real. Security, freedom, the ability to take care of the people you love, not having to make decisions out of desperation. That's what's actually at stake, not just a number in an app. And the irony is, the most powerful financial decisions you'll ever make won't happen during a crash. They'll happen in quiet moments, before anything dramatic is even on the radar. The preparation, the clarity, the small, consistent steps. That's where the real story gets written. Markets will do what markets do. They always have. But you get to decide how exposed you are when they do. You get to decide how informed you are, how liquid you are, how emotionally prepared you are. And if you're here, watching this, asking these questions, thinking this far ahead, you're already doing something right. If this video helped you think a little more clearly about your finances, drop a like. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to hear this. And if you have a question or want me to cover something specific, leave it in the comments. I read every single one. I'm Mike, this is Wealth Vault, and I'll see you in the next one.